Throughout the multiverse saga, Marvel has mainly used the concept of the multiverse as a way to bring back old characters and capitalize on the powerful effects of fan service and nostalgia.
Gratuitous cameos? Indiscriminate use of variants, the whole package.
So as I sat and watched Marvel's latest film, Fantastic Four: First Steps, there was one recurring thought that kept popping into my brain. This is what the multiverse saga should have always been. And I mean that in more ways than one.
Please welcome the Fantastic Four.
For starters, this is the first MCU film set entirely in a different universe, which for a saga titled The Multiverse Saga is kinda weird.
Weird.
But this has a huge positive benefit on the film. First of all, it's worth mentioning that since the movie is completely standalone, you can just jump straight into it. One of the biggest complaints that people have had with this saga is the amount of homework that audiences have to do in order to watch some of these films. But that's not a problem here, with the movie just being off in its own pocket universe. But more importantly, the movie being in its own world allows the film so much creative freedom. The movie's able to have a completely new style and aesthetic to what we're used to seeing in the main 616, with this retro future vibe where the clothes people wear and the cars they drive are all reminiscent of the 1960s. While at the same time, the technology is futuristic and beyond what we even have in the main MCU.
We define the aesthetic as where Kirby meets Kubrick. So Jack Kirby, original creator with Stan Lee of Fantastic Four, and Stanley Kubrick, 2001, which was sort of the great retro-futuristic movie of that time.
There's a completely new history to this world that the movie gets to make up about the past adventures of these heroes and the villains that may or may not have a connection. It very much reminded me of some of the feelings I had watching Harry Potter, where you get to go off to this completely new fantasy world that has its own rules of how society works, with its own distinct style and flavor. Unlike the main MCU, which, let's be honest, is just our world with superheroes in it. I think this is the true potential that comes along with the multiverse, not the number of cameos that can be stuffed into a movie. I also think this separate universe approach is so much better than trying to squish the Fantastic Four into the pre-existing MCU. This is something we've seen Marvel do with characters like Captain Marvel or the Eternals, where they have to come up with a reason as to why these heroes haven't been seen or talked about during all these world-ending threats, and it just never really makes sense. Like, after watching this film, I think it's pretty clear that something like Eternals should have been set in its own universe. And not just to avoid the weird retconning. You see, when you set the movie in its own world, you also make the stakes much more plausible. During a movie like The Eternals, when the threat is that the entire planet is going to explode, you instantly know that's not going to happen. There's no real possibility for the villain to win. But during this movie, since it's in a completely separate universe, there's actually a real chance. Like, I genuinely thought that this movie might end with Galactus destroying Earth, especially given the post-credit scene of Thunderbolts that shows the Fantastic Four arriving in Earth 616. I was half expecting this movie to finish with Galactus munching on the planet, while the Fantastic Four take the Silver Surfer's advice and get the hell out of there. Now, ultimately, the movie didn't go that route and settled for a much safer, happier ending, but at least the potential was there for this world-ending threat to come true. The only sad thing about all of this is it seems like Marvel has realized the potential of using the multiverse to tell stories in their own world just in time for them to do away with the multiverse concept entirely, as after Secret Wars, it seems like we will once again be going back to just one universe. But not only did this movie show how Marvel could have better used multiple universes, it also handled a ton of the most common complaints that people have had with the multiverse saga. Post-Endgame, many have felt like the MCU has struggled to fill in the gap left by core heroes like Tony Stark and Steve Rogers. And while for some that is a gap that will never be filled, I think this movie is maybe the closest we've ever gotten. The characters here are so instantly likable, and the movie does a great job of making you care for them even before the main plot of this film starts to go down. Pedro Pascal absolutely nailed it as Reed Richards, and I know everyone has a problem with this guy being cast in literally everything, but honestly, when he's this good in everything he's in, why are we complaining? He's able to pull off something that is so different to his other roles, like Joel in The Last of Us, as he really comes across as such an anxious and somewhat timid guy that feels like he has the weight of the world on his shoulders. I mean, hell, even his voice sounds unlike anything we've ever heard from him.
This equation not only confirms alternate dimensions, but it suggests parallel Earths exist on different dimensional planes. Who wants to see a big explosion?
Vanessa Kirby as Sue Storm was probably the standout for me, as she portrays Sue in such a well-rounded way, as someone who isn't one-dimensional, but has both a soft and, when needed, harsh side to her. You really get to feel that Sue is the heart of this team in a way that you never felt in any of the older Fantastic Four films. Now, Johnny Storm is interesting. I know some people weren't a fan of the movie making him much smarter than he is in previous adaptations, but honestly, I thought it really worked here. I enjoyed the fact that he's actually competent in this movie because it makes him feel like he belongs on this team and is not just a hot-headed liability. He still likes women and likes to tease Ben, but in a more toned-down way that just made him feel more real. Lastly, we have Ben Grimm, who unfortunately is the one character that gets a bit shortchanged here. We don't get enough time to really explore him, which is a shame because on paper, he just might be the most interesting member of the team. After all, he's the only one who came back with a massive change to his appearance, and that's something the movie never really gets into. It feels like he had more to do in the film originally, as there's quite clearly some relationship with Natasha Lyonne's character that was probably a bigger part of the film that they had to cut in the editing room. I mean, considering the film is under 2 hours, I kinda wish we had gotten a longer version, as I don't think anyone would have complained about an extra 10 minutes in here to flesh out his character. Besides our heroes, even a character like Silver Surfer was surprisingly well done, and unlike many antagonists in the multiverse saga, I'm actually interested in seeing her again. They were able to give her a backstory that I really wasn't expecting, by showing how she sacrificed herself to save her world. Something that makes her character much more compelling and even sympathetic.
For your time is short.
Another common complaint in the multiverse saga has of course been the visuals. There's been a lot of projects that either due to rushing or an over-reliance on VFX have just not looked the best, especially when it comes to CGI. But this movie reminded me of just how good films like this can look, as pretty much all of the CGI in here was believable. Like the scene where we get to see Silver Surfer for the first time has this incredible close-up on her that just feels so tangible. It doesn't have that overly smooth, glossy feel like the Iron Man suit towards the end of the Infinity Saga. Instead, you can just see all of the texture in a way that reminds you of the early Iron Man days. And the rest of the visuals, specifically the scenes in outer space, were genuinely some of the best in the entire MCU, and like many people have said, do remind you of movies like Interstellar. But perhaps my favorite thing that this movie gets right that a lot of the saga hasn't is tone. The tonal balance of this film was a lot better than many of Marvel's projects in the past 5 or so years. It's not perfect, and there was still a few times where I thought the humor was a bit out of place, mostly coming from Johnny Storm, but overall, the tonal balance was definitely an improvement for the MCU. It was able to stay serious enough so as to not undermine the emotional stakes and tension of the film. Overall, Fantastic Four was a reminder of what the multiverse saga could and really should have been this entire time. While there's only 3 films left, if they follow Fantastic Four's footsteps, then we'll be sure to end on a high note.